Bismillah, wa salatu wa salam Rasulullah, wa ba'd. In the name of Allah, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His last and final messenger. As to what follows, family, friends, foes, haters, and hateettes, welcome back to the Feachaz. I greet you all in peace and love and no hatred in my heart. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So before we begin, as usual, please give me the thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Like, subscribe, share, hit me up on Patreon. We do have memberships now going on in the Feachaz channel. And next week, I believe I have some videos for the members and the Patreons. And as you know, we got a lot of haters up in here. All right, so it's important for you guys to support the channel, support what we do here on the Feachaz. As you know, we do it for the people, man. This is just like some real stuff happening here. And we have a very, very, very real topic going on today, inshallah. So for those of you who know me, you already know, you don't know that for me, I'm not into sectarianism. I don't believe that it helps the ummah at all, especially us in the diaspora. It is extremely destructive. And those of you who are my day ones, been following me from day one, you don't know that, you know, I'm a equal opportunity hate person, and people just hate me, man. I got like Sufis hating me, and I also have so-called Salafis hating me. Both of them try to destroy my channel. You feel me? And so I tell the truth no matter who it's for or who is against. Even though I myself, I do adhere to the Salafi manhaj, but I adhere to the manhaj. I don't adhere to the sect or the people or the group. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Brother Hakim. You know, I don't adhere to any group or I don't subscribe to that. I don't believe that this is permissible. And the fruits of sectarianism have been apparent, particularly for us in the diaspora, those of us who are new to Islam and have no history of Islamic scholarship. Y'all hearing me? So why am I mentioning this? The reason why I'm mentioning this, as you can see from the title, guidance over scholarship. Those of you who have been Muslim for a long time, and I always like to go back to the 90s. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sister Rabia. I always like to go back to the 90s because, in my opinion, because this is the Islam that I know, this is when I became Muslim, and in those days, the dawah was pure and it was growing very rapidly, particularly the Salafi dawah. Are you understanding me? So I have a benchmark to see what is quality and what is not quality. So when I say guidance over scholarship, what am I talking about? In those days when we were making dawah because we wanted to guide the people to Islam. You understand? We wanted to bring the people to Islam. We wanted to call the people to Allah. And it was a type of purity to it. But as is the Sunnah of Allah, Azza wa Jal, is that He says, do you think that we would just leave you on the earth and that you are not going to be tested? So Allah, He tested us, thus us in the black diaspora, with some serious tests that we'd never seen before. And this test caused not only the dawah to be destroyed, but it also caused the debasing of the Islamic progress in the black community specifically. Are y'all hearing me? So, and part of the reason that is because, of course, we were new to Islam. We don't have any record of Islamic scholarship. Yes, this is all true, right? But we allowed other people to tell us what to do, and we just fell for it. And that is a responsibility upon all of us. We have an entire generation of Muslims lost now. They're just lost. A whole generation of children who were born in that era because of the splitting and fighting and this type of sectarianism. They themselves don't want anything to do with Islam. Are y'all hearing me? So now, in 2021, we have many different schools of thoughts, many different ideologies and whatnot. And we have very little in terms of dawah. And if you recall, I mentioned about the story of Isa alayhi salam, of Jesus, peace be upon him. When he was calling his people to Allah, what was the reason? Like, why? What was the main thing that his people were doing wrong that Allah sent a messenger from him to those people at that time? Did they believe in Allah? Yes, they believed in Allah. He wasn't sent to mushrikun. He was sent to people who actually believed in Allah at that time. You know, from the Beni Israel. They had the book. They had the Torah. Okay, they had the Torah. They had their own scholarship. They already had scholarship. But what they were doing is that they were taking the book of Moses and they were using it as a type of weapon. They were weaponizing the book against the poor, the oppressed, and whatnot. And they moved away from the spirit of what actually was intended by Allah revealing the Torah in the first place. So Allah sent Isa alayhi salam, verifying that which is in the Torah, that which was correct, and he strengthened the message with the Injil. You understand? And the Injil was the good news. The Injil itself was the spirit of the message of Isa. You know? And what was the spirit of the message of Isa? The spirit of the message of Isa, do unto you others as you want done unto you. These type of things. These type of soft skills that are absolutely necessary and needed in order to build a functioning, thriving community. He was sent in that way, you know, to love your neighbor, to respect your elders, you know, to have good manners and these type of things. And so Allah Azza wa Jal, he sent the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in that same spirit. Y'all hearing me? The spirit of good manners, the spirit of loving your neighbors, the spirit of being concerned for the sick and the poor and the oppressed. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was nobody more concerned about poor, downtrodden people than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if he was alive during the times of slavery, do you think that he would allow that to happen under his watch? No, he would never allow that to happen under his watch. If he was alive at that time, he himself, we know because of his character, the way that he was, we have so much information about the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We know that even if he had to go on a ship, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, himself, and sail across the ocean to free enslaved black people, he would have done it because that was his character. We understand this. So when we were making dawah in the 90s and whatnot, we're making the dawah in the spirit of Islam. Now, as I said before, I don't believe in sectarianism at all. I believe that it is abhorrent and it is against the Sunnah. And it is something that the Prophet says he himself spoke against. He spoke explicitly against sectarianism. And anybody who falls into sectarianism, you will know them by their actions. You will see them directly by their actions, because they are calling to their sect, to their group, and they will always disparage anybody that opposes their group. So you find the Sufis always speaking against the Salafis, and the Salafis always speaking against the Ash'ira, and the Ash'ira always speaking against Wahhabis, and like this. You feel me? In the West, when it comes to Black people in diaspora, this is not our argument or our problem. We have more than enough problems to be worried about sectarianism. Now you're understanding me. Our people in the West, the majority of our people are not Muslim. So the first thing and our first concern should be calling them to Allah Himself. Those of us who have studied abroad and overseas, when they come back, they need to be supported in making dawah to our people. And the support has to come from the people themselves. If you look at every single other Muslim country, every Muslim country has a long line of scholarship. But I want to ask you, and you guys can put it in the chat, inshallah. Which came first in terms of the Prophet ﷺ? The scholarship or the guidance? Yes, salam. Which came first? The scholarship or the guidance? Did the Prophet ﷺ, was he able to read? Yes, the guidance came first. When Allah revealed to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. That was the first ayah revealed to the Prophet ﷺ. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Read in the name of your Lord who created. So Allah is revealing to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ the ayah of read. And the Prophet ﷺ, he himself, he couldn't read. And because of this ayah, Allah now has put a standard for every single Muslim after the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So from an illiterate man, guidance came to an illiterate people. And that illiterate people now strove and struggled for knowledge, for scholarship. You understanding me? But they were guided to it first. Did we not find you a yatim, an orphan, and we guided you? This is what comes first. The guidance comes first. Now, why am I mentioning this? It's because a lot of our imams and our du'at, when they come from the Middle East or wherever country they're studying from, they come over here, they want to go directly into the scholarship part. And this is more an advice to our people. This is a mistake. In my humble opinion, this is a mistake. That's my humble. What our people need right now, and we, especially us Black people, we know this more than anybody. We need guidance. That is much more important than teaching mustalah hadith or Ajurumiyya or any of these mutun. Our people need to learn the manners of a Muslim, as the Messenger of Allah was sent to perfect manners. And what sectarianism does, it actually blinds you from seeing what your opponent is telling you. But if you would listen to what your opponent is telling you, you're going to learn something about yourself. What is the main complaint of non-Salafis against Salafis? The number one complaint. Somebody write it in the chat, please. The number one complaint of non-Salafis against Salafis, what is it? Somebody put it in the chat, please. What is the one thing that people are not exactly? They're rude. Thank you, Rabia. Attitude manners. Thank you, Tiffany. So if everybody is telling you that you don't have manners, that you're rude, either everybody is lying and you're telling the truth, arrogance, thank you, Hakeem, or you are in denial. And you would be in denial in one situation and one situation only. That is because a Sufi told you about your arrogance. So because he's Sufi, you can't listen to him. But if you had listened to the Sufi, maybe you might learn manners. Because the one thing that Sufis perfect and they work on perfecting is their character. And Salafis, and not just Salafis rather, but Muslims and black people in diaspora all together, the one thing they can benefit from is manners. But if you are not at the pinnacle of having manners, then what is your Islam benefiting you? Are you hearing me now? And as I said at the beginning of this talk, both people were Sufi and Salafi. They claim they both be trying to shut down my channel. It's equal opportunity here. But for me, it's no hate. It's legit no hate. No hate from. I don't hate either of them. But I'm an equal opportunity truth teller. You understand? So if you have the ability to learn good manners from a Sufi, should you not do it? You go to the Kufar schools and you learn math, you learn science, you learn English, you learn all this stuff. You learn even sex ed and all this the stuff you learn from Kufar. But the thing that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came to perfect, you didn't learn them from them. Likewise, with the Nation of Islam, they are in the forefront of the black community. They are visible and they are very well respected in the black community. Black people, or black Muslims rather, are invisible to their own people. We are the ones who should be in the forefront teaching our own people, but we've been told by other people that we are not allowed to teach our people, thus destroying our own dawah to our own people. Are you hearing me? Furthermore, making enemies where there are no enemies. The Nation of Islam has no history, and I repeat, they have no history about speaking against Orthodox Muslims. And if they do speak against Orthodox Muslims, they only do it in what's the reality of the situation. Listen, I want to tell you guys something, okay? And I'm going to be very blunt, okay? I want to be crystal clear, okay? Because a lot of y'all, when you talk about nation, you want to go, you're talking about Khilafah and Ottomans and all this kind of stuff, and you know what I mean? and no to black nationals, all this kind of craziness, things that make no sense for us in the black diaspora. You do not have our best interest at heart at all. But I want to tell you something, right? A lot of you ain't going to like me for this, but I'm going to tell you the truth. Okay? I want to be crystal clear. The Ottomans, okay? The Ottomans is your history. It's not our history. It has nothing to do with black people at all, okay? All of y'all talking about Khilafah and the great Ottomans, who made them so great? In the beginning of the Ottoman Empire, okay, yeah, we can see that. But where were the Muslims, when the Muslims being kidnapped by these European animals in the transatlantic slave trade, where were the Ottomans? They were right there participating, collecting their own African slaves. Their ulama were giving fatwa on how to, they would never end slavery because it was legislated in the Quran and the Sunnah. Just like those Beni Israel at the time of Isa. The same thing. Okay? Instead of going into the spirit of what the Torah was revealed, they just go into the letter. You feel me? And then they're making fatwa, which are politically expedient for the Khilafah at that time. And at that time, we're not ending slavery. You understand me? But you want us, those of us who became Muslim despite the Ottomans, to stand up for the Ottomans. Ottoman Empire, the first empire in the modern ages to decriminalize homosexuality, the Ottomans. Okay? Those Ottomans. According to W.E.B. Du Bois, a conservative estimate of Africans lost in the middle passage of the transatlantic slave trade was 100 million people. That's a conservative estimate. As populations were being depleted from the western coast of Africa, European slave traders started making their way inland and to the south and to the north. And who were catching these slaves? Who were catching these slaves? Somebody put it in the chat, please. Who were catching these slaves? Somebody please put it in the chat. Those of you who know history. Who were catching the slaves? Walaikum salam, Abdul-Mateen. Africans, and who else? Africans, yes, we know that, but who else was catching them? Come on, somebody knows history. Put it in the chat, please. Let's say it. Let this truth come out today. Arabs, thank you. Muslim Arabs. Thank you, Hanif. Thank you, Hakim. Thank you, Rabia. Arabs. Arabs were catching Africans, including black Muslims. And under whose watch were they catching these black Africans and Muslims? Under the watch of the Ottomans. Then our forefathers, 30% of which who were Muslim, after they were kidnapped, they were mated like animals. Okay? You know how you have, like, you're breeding dogs or you're breeding cattle? Black people were breeded in the same manner. Okay? Including the Muslims, forced to not speak or read. And when our great-grandmothers gave birth, they took those babies away. Mother wasn't allowed to name her baby Abdullah, nor was she allowed to keep her own name, Fatima. We were robbed of our names, robbed of our language. We lost our culture. We lost our religion. We lost our God. And we even lost our minds. And when did this happen? Under the watch of the Ottomans. Black people fought. Okay? Black people fought in the wars of these wicked people. Okay, these wicked oppressors. And the sons and the daughters of these evil people are in charge up until this very day. We fought, we shed blood based on their lying fork-tongued promises. They promised us 40 acres and a mule. Did you get it? Did you get it? Put in a chat if you got your 40 acres and a mule. They promised us freedom. Did you get it? Put it in the chat if you got your freedom. Put it in the chat, please. We lost our lives for their freedom. And you come here and you enjoy the freedom that we never got on soil stained in our blood. Are you hearing me? The blood of Black people. Meanwhile, at the same time when this is going on, the Civil War, South Asian, Muslim, and Hindus were being brought from India to keep Black African slaves in line in the Caribbean. Are you hearing me? And not a single South Asian descendant did so much as break a fingernail in the West Indies or in South America for Black people. When did this happen? Under Ottoman rule. Then World War I happened. And Black people again shed the blood of these fork-tongued liars. They did it again. They went, these oppressors, they lied again. Okay? And we fought in World War I. The Ottoman Empire fell. Do you think those Black people knew or cared who the Ottomans were? Well, we are the sons and the daughters of those people. Why do you think that we should come to defend those in whose minds we weren't even so much as an afterthought, let alone so-called brothers and sisters? Our forefathers didn't know them, even though they knew us. They knew us very well. We didn't know them. But you expect us, the children and descendants of those who shed blood in World War I, to fight for a people who lost their empire due to their own greed? Let's speak facts now. Let's be real. You're the ones who are telling us that they were great. When you read their history, we can say, okay, in the beginning they were great. In the middle part, they started doing some crazy stuff. And at the end, no, they were way off. But you want us to go back to that? World War II happened. And again, Black people shed their own blood on foreign soil, only to come back to segregation, redlining, Jim Crow, so that white people again can enjoy freedom that Black people could never get. And do you know who else was invited to enjoy that same freedom during that time? Who else was invited? It was Arabs and South Asians. In America, in the Americas, in Europe, as long as they agreed to participate in the oppression of Black people, they were allowed to participate in capitalism. Are you hearing me? Arabs in America fighting in the Supreme Court to be classified as Caucasian. You were here. You were here when we were going through Jim Crow. You were here when we were going through segregation and redlining and whatnot. Are you hearing me? South Asians classified as Caucasian. You were here in the 30s, the 40s, and 50s. You never concerned yourself with Black people. Your only involvement in the Black community was selling pork, loose cigarettes, and alcohol. That was it. And you've been doing that for decades. You were trying to bring you weren't trying to bring no Islam to black people. You were trying to get over on black people, and you still do it. And let me ask you something. What is Islamophobia? If y'all been here since the 30s and you have no history as a Muslim community speaking against the injustices against black people, you have no history of this. Zero. Are you understanding me? As a matter of fact, the only well-recorded involvement you have is telling black people that not to hate white people because that would be hating too. That would be racist. That's the only thing that we have documented, well-recorded documentation of your involvement. Okay? So y'all were here. Even the Jews, they have a better track record than you of fighting against the oppression of black people in the West. Okay? But as soon as you see Elijah Muhammad, okay, all of a sudden you remember us. Okay? Now you remember us. You remember the Nation of Islam isn't Muslim, and you're not, and now you're interested in dawah. Now you're interested in dawah because of Elijah Muhammad. And you only want to hear other black du'ats and callers and scholars trash the nation. That's all you want to hear. Meanwhile, with the same mouth that Allah created for you, you tell us that grave worshipping Sufis are not mushrikun because they have an excuse of ignorance, udhr jahl. That's what you tell us. So Elijah Muhammad was a man who couldn't read Quran, nor could his followers, nor do they have any track record of any Islamic scholarship in the black community in his time. Many black people would have never even heard the name of Allah if it wasn't for him, because y'all sure as hell weren't telling us who Allah was, selling us poison that you wouldn't yourselves ever take. But he and his followers get no excuse. They get no excuse, no udhr jahl. Okay? But your people in Turkey, your people in Egypt, your people in Pakistan, your people in Iraq, your people in Yemen, with centuries worth of scholarship and books and access to knowledge, who go to worship at graves, what do you say about them? What do you say about them? Udhr jahl, excuse of ignorance. That's your record. So for black people now, when you know all of this, and you know you're not going to find help from any other people group, your only help is from Allah himself. That's it. This is your only way you're going to get help. You're not going to get help from your government. They're not going to help you. You're not going to get help from any other Muslim country. Going to make hijrah in some other land is not going to save you. There is no place on the planet that is safe for you except for the place that Allah makes safe for you. At this point, what should be your strategy? What should be your strategy? Your strategy should be getting closer to Allah, correct? Because when you're closer to Allah, then the dua and the call of the oppressed and his Lord, there's no hijab, there's no barrier. We are the only people who have a long history, documented history of practicing real brotherhood with every other people group. While at the same time, other people groups are getting over on us. So at this time, what we should be doing is telling our women, like, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that, if he had to make a slave bow to another slave, who would make the wife bow to their husbands because of what they're good that they do. This is the message that our women need to be hearing. The message that our children need to be hearing. Respect your parents. The message that the men need to be hearing. Good manners. the message that we all need to be hearing. The message of brotherhood, but real brotherhood, not brotherhood without intelligence. Not brotherhood for the sake of brotherhood. This stuff that you're hearing right here on this channel is medicine for people because it's the truth. All of it is the truth. Either if those other people groups are serious about brotherhood, they're going to work together with you like this to build a community. If they're serious, then you'll know who your real brothers are. But if you're in other communities, because there's this psychological quirk with Black people because of slavery, this, generational psychological disease, that we always want to be included in other people's community. So we begging for integration, and we're begging for equal rights, and we want to be brothers with this one and that one. And this is a disease. How do you want to be brothers with people who don't want to be your brother? You want to be brothers with people who hate you. Rather, you practice the Sunnah and you be upright and you practice chivalry. But it's chivalry with intelligence, not blind brotherhood, giving all your money to the masjid. To the masjid? All your money? So that they don't do anything for you? So now the masjid becomes a tool to bankrupt the community? We need guidance. We don't need to be studying all these mundane matun. What we need are not just lessons in the Quran, but the understanding of the Quran. One of the best channels, in my opinion, actually two channels that are the best channels, in my opinion, are of exactly what Black people need spiritually. Sheikh Abdullah Hakim Quick's channel and Sheikh Tahir Wyatt's channel. These two channels, what Black people will need right now, and that will help them instantly. But it's also practicing, the practice of that. Once you start practicing sectarianism and all this kind of stuff that causes division in the Muslim community, then you are going to lose yourself and you're going to lose another generation of children. We can't afford to lose another generation. Okay, I'm going to read some of these comments. Let's see. The Wayfarer, capitalism is basically allowing private ownership of land and the capital goods and allowing the free market to determine prices. Core principles and capitalists are aligned with Islam. I'm not getting into the details of capitalism. I'm getting into what foreigners were allowed to do and participate in off the backs of Black people. Black people have historically never been allowed to participate in capitalism. That's what redlining is. That's what apartheid is. That's what segregation is. Those systems where what they say is that if a certain people live in a certain area, then these people can't get loans. They can't get loans to get capital. And these areas just happen to be the Black areas. You understand? Arabs and South Asians were allowed to participate in capitalism off the backs of Black people. And so you go into the Black community, there's always some Yemeni with some store selling loose cigarettes or something like that, or some Pakistani or something like this, with the gas station and whatnot, selling cigarettes in the Black community and alcohol, because they were allowed to participate in capitalism. How can you have all these Black people in the same neighborhood? Not one Black person owns the store. It's always foreigners owning the stores in Black neighborhoods. That's the reality. You understand? Black people need to read Paranormals. Of course they do, but we need to do much more than read. There's a lot of work to do. We have to be very practical and methodical in our movements. And practicality and being methodical also necessitates certain sacrifices that are necessary for the improvement of the community, like getting rid of social media for one. Okay, I come on social media to meet you guys. You guys know that I don't really comment and stuff. Like, you guys know this all stuff and stuff like that. But I come on to meet you guys. You understand? Like giving up these horrific behaviors that we had in Jahiliyyah, talking to women, going to women's DMs, women meeting men, all this kind of stuff, women talking back to men, all these crazy backwards behaviors that we have. We have to, that it requires sacrifice. You understand? But anyways, it's almost time for Salat now. Inshallah. There's more I wanted to say, but the time is getting closer and closer to Maghrib. So don't forget to like, subscribe, share. Hit me up on Patreon. Subhanaka wa bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.